Israel talks of encouraging Gazans to immigrate elsewhere, while U.S. President Joe Biden states that this would be a big mistake. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the idea is unrealistic. But let's hang tight, guys, and we're going to take a look at what the majority of Israelis say about this. I'm Joshua, and this is the Israel Guys. Welcome back to the Israel Guys, where we believe that in a world of anti-Israel propaganda and Jew hatred, you should have a direct connection to the land and people of Israel. Guys, don't forget to subscribe. We got a lot of platforms out there to get this direct news from Israel right here on the ground to you, wherever you are. Be sure and follow us on social media and all our platforms. Guys, we're digging into a very controversial topic today. The ideas are floating around like crazy at this point. One of them is even asking Saudi Arabia to take hundreds of thousands of Arab Palestinians to join their workforce. They currently bring in around 500,000 foreign workers. Why not bring Gazans? That's thinking creatively. According to the senior source in the Israeli security cabinet, Congo, of all places, Congo, the Republic of Congo, has reportedly begun to open its doors for voluntary migration from Gaza. The officials said Congo will be willing to take in migrants, and we're in talks with others. Looks like this could actually branch out into even more countries, accepting Gazans who would like to get out of the situation there. Now, lastly, and probably most far-fetched, rebuilding Gaza for the Gazans in the Sinai Peninsula has also been brought up. I love the ideas. I think people are really thinking creatively. The real test is, what is the mainstream? What is the leadership of Israel saying to this? Is this kind of some quack thing, or is this actually representing the majority of Israelis? And what is the Israeli leadership talking about and thinking of these ideas, just to mention a few? We're going to break it down right now. Let's look at the majority of Israelis, what they're saying. Channel 12 News, most popular TV channel in Israel, held a survey last month, said 44% of respondents supported reestablishing Israeli settlements in Gaza. So I know you may be hearing the Biden administration and others throughout the world saying that maybe that's the last thing you've heard, but actually the Israelis, a large majority, are actually moving in the direction of reestablishing Jewish presence back in the Gaza area. Only 39% opposed it. So we have a pretty good percentage there that are supporting it, 17% undecided, and 68% of the conservative right-wing bloc of Israel supported the move of reestablishing settlements, Israeli settlements in the Gaza. Now, this is really fascinating. Amit Segal, he's one of Israel's most influential journalists here in Israel. He held a poll on his Telegram channel. The poll showed that 94% of Israelis are in favor of encouraging immigration to Gaza residents. That's fascinating. That means a mass majority of Israelis support the idea of allowing Gazans to go elsewhere. Now, that is a fascinating thought, and the fact that the majority of Israelis, now Amit Segal is one of the is in a conservative group, and those that would be on his Telegram channel represents conservative, but yet he's one of the most influential journalists in the country. So this stat is no small, or this poll is no small poll, and should be recognized as majority of Israel is certainly on track with seeing Gazans allowed out of Gaza and into a greater world, hopefully to succeed there. Now, I want to look quickly, and we'll get more into that in just 1 minute. I want to look quickly at what the leaders are saying. That's the leaders of Israel, and we'll finish off with a little bit from the State Department. Here's MK Ohad Tal, this minister of Knesset. The goal of the war should be the state of Israel controlling all areas of the Gaza Strip, not for a week, not for 2 weeks, but permanently. I like that. Yossi Dagan, the Samaria governor, says this. He's convinced that there is a majority in the present government in favor of resettling Gaza because that's what the nation wants. Here we go again. This looks like a majority move in Israel that's saying it's time for Israel to establish itself again in Gaza. which anyone in their right mind could agree with this. The only reason why somebody would not is if they're a part of the appeasement governments that try to cuddle up to the leftist governments of the world that are not thinking positively on and what's actually best for Israel. MK Smoltrich says, he stated that over 70% of Israelis support the idea of encouraging voluntary immigration. So again, we got it from another angle here. Meet Sagels was the 94%. The MK states that he believes it's 70% overall, which is fascinating. Intelligence Minister Gila Gamliel just yesterday stated this: voluntary migration is the best and most realistic program for the day after the fighting ends. She continued on and said, the Gaza problem is not just our problem. Gamliel says the world should support humanitarian immigration because that's the only solution I know. Again, that comes from the intelligence minister. We're talking about high-level people saying that this is the best way forward. IDF Colonel and CEO of Ad Khan, Gilad Ach, says he put together an in-depth action plan for what should happen in Gaza. Two things stood out. He says this: disperse and settle the Gaza population in as many countries as possible, with emphasis on the Gulf states and European countries facing a significant shortage of working hands. So again, the idea is to actually help rebuild these Gazans' lives, pull them out of the absolute crud that they've been given for all these years under the Hamas regime, the ideologies of hate and killing and all of the horrors that they've grown in. Try to pull them out of that, get them into a system where they could actually grow and be brought into, like you said, working hands, giving them jobs to help them move forward. The second thing was declare Israel. This was stated his statements here: declare full Israeli sovereignty over the entire Gaza Strip, relocating the settlements destroyed in the October 7th attack into the territory of the Strip, establishing towns, IDF bases, nature reserves, and tourist sites near the beaches, significantly expanding the city of Sderot into the territory of the Strip. Now, that, I believe, we're talking, it's major advancements. And again, I'm talking about a IDF colonel, not just anyone who actually is very educated. Ad Khan, very well represented here in the land of Israel and has mass support amongst the people of Israel. Again, another IDF general, deputy command of the IDF's Gaza division back in 2010-2011, founder and CEO of the Israel Defense and Security Forum, a security advocacy group with 16,000 members. This is Amir Avivi, says that resettling the Gaza Strip is the only way to ensure Israel's security in the long term. Now, we opened up with Benjamin Netanyahu sounding, what did he say? This was unrealistic. This is not, can't really happen. But get this, coming from the Prime Minister himself, he said this to his Likud party in a recent meeting, that he is working to facilitate the voluntary migration of Gazans to other countries. He quoted, "Our problem is finding countries that are willing to absorb Gazans, and we are working on it." So, unlike what it sounds like in the beginning, even the Prime Minister himself, Benjamin Netanyahu, is coming on board with the idea of opening the gates to Gaza and allowing these people to find refuge outside of the Hamas stronghold, the Iranian proxy Hamas clause, into other areas, and Israel's helping to open those doors. Hey guys, we'll be right back with the rest of the show, but first let me introduce you to the Israel Bible Book of Psalms, Pray Like David edition. This book of Psalms is in both Hebrew and English with the verse-by-verse English transliteration. That's more than 30,000 Hebrew words made accessible to you, allowing you to read, pronounce, and understand every Hebrew word of the Psalms. Reading Psalms, bringing comfort and strength to the heart and soul. And now you can read them in King David's original words in Hebrew. For a limited time, our friends at Israel 365 are extending an exclusive discount to viewers of the Israel Guys. Click the link in the description below to buy the Israel Bible Book of Psalms for only $29.99, nearly 40% off the retail price of $49.99. Dive into the Psalms, walk in the footsteps of King David, and pray with renewed passion and understanding. With the Israel Bible Book of Psalms, Pray Like David edition, you'll pray like never before. Click on the link in the description below to buy the Israel Bible, Book of Psalms today. On the flip side, we have the U.S. State Department that seems to be going absolutely livid over this, stating that the rhetoric is inflammatory and irresponsible. U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, also, quote, there should be no mass displacement of Palestinians from Gaza, and we reject the recent inflammatory statements from the Israeli ministers, speaking of Ben-Gvir and Smotrich. Now, I love how they just twisted it into mass displacement. We're not talking about mass displacement, Mrs. UN. We're talking about opening the gates that have been barred, allowing the Gazans to actually have freedom, which I know the UN is not interested in that. Neither is the U.S. State Department. They might as well be proxies of the Iranians themselves. Let's look at this. Let's think quickly what's actually going on here. Israel has been blamed of holding a blockade against Gaza now for years, and the anti-Israel whole rhetoric is really based on Israel's blockade on Gaza. How many times have you heard that? But let's think about this. Who actually has the blockade on Gaza? Is it Israel? No, it's not actually Israel. And the majority of Israelis, with everything that I've just talked about, the majority of Israelis support actually opening, busting down the Iranian blockade on Gaza and allowing the Gazans to go freely from the clutches of the Iranian proxy Hamas leadership in Gaza. Now, everyone that disagrees with what I just said cares nothing about human life, cares nothing about Gazans' actual well-being. They simply are a part of, maybe they're being paid off by some Iranian warlord somewhere. But if you truly care for Gazans, you would want to see them out of the clutches of the Hamas hand. And the best way to do that is exactly what Israel is opening, what they're trying to open. I'm telling you, Iranian blockade is no easy thing to open. That's exactly what the IDF is doing right now in Gaza. They're busting the blockade that Hamas has entrenched and taken over the people of Gaza. Israel's success in this war will mean, which it will mean that the Gazan people will live much better lives outside of the oppression posed on them by their leadership, Hamas. Allowing them to go freely to other countries will be the biggest and best thing all of them would hope for. The Gazans need answers that the world is not giving. Israel has the answer that the Gazans, the people that actually would like to get out of this mess and go to places, as we mentioned in the beginning. All of these are great answers for Gazans. Just their politics, they wouldn't be able to say it. We'll get into a little bit about what actually the Gazans are saying in just a minute. Let's talk about this. Why all of a sudden is this, and we saw it with the UN, themselves calling this mass displacement. Is this mass displacement? Is this ethnic cleansing? You see mass displacement, ethnic cleansing. You're going to see it all over the headlines. As soon as Israel tries to do something positive and actually help the people of Gaza get out of their situation, the world and all of the media outlets are going to start labeling Israel with you're ethnically cleansing the Gaza, and all of these statements, ethnically cleansing and mass displacement. This is not what Israel's doing, and don't be naive to think that is what's happening. This is the agenda of the Iranians to make you believe that that's what's happening because they need you on their team. And the way they do that is through mass miseducation on the world scheme of things, and they have billions of dollars to do it, and they're being successful. Don't buy into it. Let's look at what's actually happening. And by the way, we're already seeing this big time in the news headlines, and this just literally came out yesterday. But let's look at something. In 2015, when 6,700,000 Syrian refugees relocated to welcoming nations all around the world, what did people say? Did people say, this is mass displacement and ethnic cleansing? No, they offered the Syrians a refuge outside of their troubled Syria. This is what Israel's trying to offer, is to get them out of harm's way. You have a hostile Hamas entity. We need the civilians out of the way. And that will disarm Hamas more than anything. They use the civilians as their number one soldier. We've got to get civilians to safety, and Israel's helping to do that. And just like the Syrian refugees, some ended up in Turkey and Lebanon and Jordan and Germany and Iraq and Egypt and Sweden and Canada. These are options. It worked for Syria. Why, when Israel brings it up, is it all of a sudden mass displacement and ethnic cleansing? It's not. We're fighting a war. Israel's fighting a war of survival, and this is the best way forward. All right. So what's the problem with moving 1 or 2 million Gazans into the countries that are welcoming them to come and getting them out of the grips of Hamas? I can't imagine anything wrong with that. Opening up voluntary. Remember, this is not even what the Syrians did. This was voluntary. Israel is opening up This means if you want to go, you could go. And that's what Israel's doing, trying to open up and make Gaza so that these Gazans are no longer the political pawns, again, in the hands of the Iranian warlords. I think Alex Traynor, a good friend at JNS News here in Israel, says, and I'll quote him, that the ability to flee a war zone should be a basic human right that is being denied the Gazans. And if the international community is unwilling to accept even one Gazan who wants to flee, the question is whether they actually care about the lives of Gazans at all, or if they're just using them as a leverage against Israel. Alex, that could be, I can't imagine putting that any more clear. Indeed, the world is using Gazans as leverage against Israel. They don't care about the Gazans. Understand, when you're seeing CNN and all the anti-Israel propaganda that goes on Al Jazeera and all the world news, they're using the Palestinian people as leverage against Israel. They could care less about the Gazans. That's why, when we come down to it, who's actually helping? Israel's done more for the Gazans than anyone in the region, if you really want to think about it. And they're about to do a lot more. What's the real war crime? Everybody's going to be like, this is a war crime. You can't be all the naysayers. Is Israel opening up the world for Gazans to be freed from their Hamas prison a war crime? Absolutely not. Israel opened those gates is not a war crime. What is a war crime is the Iranian Hamas regime holding the civilian Gazans captive in order to fight their war against Israel. And again, unwillingly, holding them captive to their war against Israel, using the civilians to fight a war that they're waging. That's a war crime. Now, the right thing to do, again, is let the Gazans that want to get out. Those that don't want to, that have sworn allegiance to Hamas and the obliteration of Israel, let them stay and fight. Israel's going to win this war, but those that see the end of the story and know that Israel will win this war, and there's no place in Gaza or in Israel for a regime that believes in the utter destruction of the state of Israel. It's unacceptable. It can't be allowed. Now, let's take a quick look now. The Arab Palestinians that are fleeing Gaza, you take the look at this date. It's September 19th, 2023. We'll check this video out. Guys, these guys are trying to get out of Gaza like crazy. They estimate some 250 to 300,000 Gazans left Gaza between now and 2018. But of course, when the war broke out, October 7th, all the immigration out of Gaza stopped. Nobody was allowed out. Now, what sense does that make? All these nations, Turkey and Europe and these places that were allowing visas for people out of Gaza stopped. Well, because again, the world needs Gazan civilians as their forefront to their war against Israel. Can't be more clear than that. Look at these guys. They're all seeking refuge. Let's see. Some of the young Palestinians that spoke up said this. I'll quote them. All those who are seeking to immigrate want a dignified life. The young men are risking their lives. They are prepared to die. That's literally what he said. They're just trying to leave Gaza. Who's going to kill them? Israel? No. Hamas. Here's another one. He says, I know I'm risking my life, but I want to leave, dead or alive. At least I will find a dignified life abroad. People want to leave because of the oppression and injustice we see here in the Gaza Strip. Lastly, again from JNS, it says, these Palestinians are leaving because they can no longer tolerate life under the Islamic movement of Hamas. They're not fleeing because of Israel. Guys, again, get it right. The Gazans would love to leave. Let's open up the gateways. Let's bust open the Iranian blockade, not the Israeli blockade on Gaza. Get a grip. No. Israel will open the doors to Gaza to allow the Gazans a way out of the bondage and chains that the Iranians, the Hamas leadership, have placed over them. Israel will open up the door, bust the blockade to Gaza, and allow voluntary immigration to the nations that truly are interested in helping. The nations that are not, for whatever. The nations that are actually inviting these Gazans out of their craziness, let's see that happen. Now what we need to see is not Israel. Israel's already got the answer. They're opening the gates. What we now need to see is the jihadis, the Iranians and Hamas, allow it. And then indeed we'll see who's actually in charge of the ridiculous captivity of their whole civilization there in Gaza. If the jihadis even allow this to happen, it'll be a work of a immense strength of the IDF to allow that to open and allow the Gazans to get out. Again, if anyone actually cares, this is the first thing they do to help the Gazans. This is not politics. This is literally doing the best thing for the people in the situation they're in. Guys, as always, don't forget to subscribe. Let's get the conversation going. This is a controversial topic today. Be sure and let me know what you think in the comments below. As always, tune out the fake news and tune into what's actually happening here in the land of Israel. We'll be back every Monday through Friday with your direct connection to the land and people of Israel.